manage that they want me to put in.
No,
Plus,
and I
when they
agree.
say when they're gonna say, "Hey, what sites does Bob have access to?" Oh, now I've got to go through all these policies and try and find out what Bob has access to. No, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
not gonna happen.
It's always with devices. If you're talking about routers or switches or just devices in general, it's better to have the most basic config, the most effective, but make it less complicated. 'Cause it's just easier to manage across the board. Um, I've logged into devices where my head's been running around because I cannot grasp what the previous admin was trying to do or trying to accomplish.
Hmm. Right. So one day, 6 months from now, they may say, "Hey, Bob can't get to this website. Why not?" Okay. I'm gonna now have to go through all of these exceptions and all these policies to figure out what's going on. That it's just not down the road. It's going to cause more problems than it's solved at that minute.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, that's just the one example. If you're going to start doing work for businesses, you'll learn over time what's is good to do and what's not good to do.
Mhm. Oh no,
Just because
I
they
agree.
ask you to do it doesn't mean that you need to do it or that it's going to be good for the network.
Oh, and I definitely agree. All right, next email comes from Tony. Hey guys, I've sent this. Well, he sent this before, but it got lost in the email, so I apologize. I've been listening to all your podcasts over and over. I enjoyed them immensely and learned so much from them. I am an IT student who is just looking for his first job. Listening to your podcast on the Wi-Fi zones and how you would put adjacent Wi-Fi zones on opposite end channels to stop them from interfering. I would imagine that if you set a mobile device up, automatically connect to each network when in range. I think I said that wrong, but I'm not quite understanding how the overlap would work. How would you go if you're using a device near the parameter of the two zones? The device will want to keep swapping zones as the signal change. In the case of disabling the reference zone, is there a better way to set up the device? Okay, but I think what he's saying is, what if you set up several access points throughout a physical environment?
Right.
And then
And
what's the
right.
golden rule when you're dealing with channels? Like, I know there's the most common channels that you can use, right? Which is 1, 8, and 11, I think.
1, 6, and 11.
The
I
one.
know most Linksys and default ones are on 6, I think, by default.
Right. So then you want to pick different channels so they don't overlap each other.
Right. So let's imagine we've got a building and they want wireless coverage throughout the building.
Right.
So it's hard to explain without a picture, but basically you want to have overlapping. So access point A covers a certain area. You want access B to cover a certain area, but you want A and B to overlap because you don't want a gap in the coverage. So if they're overlapping, you don't want them to use the same channel. So you may do Wi-Fi, the access point A in channel 1. You may do the access point channel in zone B 6 or even 11, but just so it's not overlapping. Now, I think what he's asking is if the device goes from A to B, or if he's in the overlapping area, would it switch back and forth? The way we've always done this before, we haven't had an issue with that. Because if you overlap the device that you're on is going to connect to the strongest signal. So I haven't had that much. And plus the overlapping area, when we've tried to do this, we've tried to put it in an area where there's really not anything, like a hallway or a break room or something where it's not overlapping, but you can't avoid it sometimes. Sometimes they're going to be overlapping where there's offices, but
right. And I cannot find a diagram so I can show you guys. So forgive me. Now, for the user or the listener who is listening, are they all in the same SSID? Do they all have the same phrase? The same key phrase?
Yep, same SSID, same security, same encryption to connect to it. All of those are the same. The only thing we want different is the channel, so they don't interfere with each other. So if you're going from channel A to channel B, you've got an IP address. When you switch over to B, you're going to retain the same IP address. So the user will hardly notice any. They're not going to really be disconnected. Now they're just connected here. So that's not an issue. Unfortunately, there's no way around that. It will go from one to the other as the user is roaming around. But in my testing, that's not disruptive. You can test this if you have say you have 3 zones, A, B, and C, down this big, long, rectangular building. If you start in the one hallway and just start a constant ping, you will switch zones and watch those pings. They're not going to drop off. You may get a delay in one when it's changing, but it's not going to drop off. Okay. So I don't think any user would recognize any. I don't even think they would know that they're connected to a different access point.
And there's also certain applications that don't come to mind right now, but I know that we have them at work. There's certain hardware and software that can test out wireless signals and so on.
Yeah, I use on my Mac. If I have to go do a wireless, just to check out the wireless, I'll use, I'm trying to pull the name of it here, iStumbler on my Mac.
Okay.
It's pretty good. It gives you a lot of information about what's going on. And actually, the iStumbler app on my Mac picks up a lot of networks. So if I, on my wireless adapter, try and go connect to a wireless access point, for some reason, iStumbler will see more than I'm allowed to connect to, which is just funny. Or they won't show up. Like if I click on my little antenna in my airport to look for networks, they won't show up. If I open iStumbler, they'll show up, and then I'll go back to my Wi-Fi, and then they might show up again. But like the airport won't see it. iStumbler will see it before airport sees it. So right now I'm looking at mine, and I'm on channel 1 at my house. I've got 2 access points. I'm on channel 1, and the other.
While Matt comes back here, there we go.
I'm actually looking at mine. I've got a Buffalo, and they put the DDWRT firmware on it. I got a Netgear and a Belkin. All those are on 6. So 6 is the common one for default. So if you're going to a business, you do a site survey, if you can detect anything using 6, stay away from it.
Yeah, and then I'll talk to we have a guy at work who he actually sets up wireless networks throughout the whole entire county. I'll bring this up to him and see what he's a all Cisco guy, so I'll see what his design looks like, or when he does multiple access points, and then I'll bring it to.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what he says, because I've heard different people do a different way.
There are different ways of doing it. There
as everything.
Yeah, there are different ways of doing it. So for those of you who are saying, "Hey, Matt, that's not the way that I do it," there are different ways of doing it. So
we found the best one, and least confusing for the customer, is to have all that same and just different channels. Sometimes I think at one point I was naming the SSID a little different, so I could tell which one they were connected to. So it might say hallway or south, hallway north, but same encryption. But then the problem is you got to go and actually join each one for them, which is annoying.
Is there interruption as they go from access point A to access point B if they're watching a YouTube video, or
it'll pause for a second, but it looks like it's just buffering for a second. That's not that noticeable. Even if it is noticeable, then I've a week before he got to the next zone, and that zone was really weak.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So instead of having a good signal between them, they tried to spread them out too far.
Right. So then they have a weak zone.
So they were weak. Yeah, they would get real weak, and then they'd switch to another weak one, and they would get stronger.
Okay. Well, again, we'll touch on this next week and see what my guy says, and I'll get back to you. Next email is from DJ. The subject is can't find address bar. And he says Command plus L for the Macs. This highlights the text in the address bar. It is great for phone instructions. Works in Chrome, Firefox, IE, and Safari. Don't know about Opera.
Yeah, and this is I've actually got I use it a lot because well, actually not for the Macs because people who run Macs seem to know where the address bar is more than the people who use Windows.
Mm-hmm.
So, but definitely because if you try and walk somebody through finding the address bar,
Oh,
it's
I got you.
ridiculous.
So,
And
what,
this is for when you tell them to go to a site. I use it every day. I'm trying to explain to them to go to the site where they can do a log me and rescue session. So, yeah, that works if you're on Windows. Of course, you have to open the browser first in each of these cases.
Mhm.
Open the browsers, press the hotkey. For Windows, it's Alt D. You press the Alt D key, it goes and highlights the text in the address bar. Another thing that I've actually switched to most is just have them go start, run, and type in the address right there.
well, I tell you what, and Control L works on Windows too.
Control L works on Windows.
Yeah, I just tried it by mistake. Control
By
L.
mistake.
Yeah. I poke, and when you guys say in emails that it works, I go poking around.
Okay, so yeah, Control L, and I've always used Alt D, but Control L and Alt D both work on Windows.
So pretty much they'll take the user straight to the address bar, and you can say hit backspace to clear it and type in log me in, rescue me, log me in, rescue 4321, and any other combination of that.
Yeah,
that name.
or what I've switched to now is start, run, type in the address because that'll open the browser and go to that website too. So
There you go.
one of the biggest frustrations finding the address bar. It's rocket science.
Alrighty, our next email is from John. He says, guys, I received an email from a client asking for a quote on a new server. His requirements are the following. 1 is change. 2, BlackBerry Enterprise server for about 15 users. I was thinking I could quote him for a Windows 2011 SPS server. Am I correct in thinking that BES is free to download? Have you guys used it or configured it? It is hard to do. Also, what model server or hard drive space would you suggest? Mr. Rainey?
Okay, so first of all, BES, BlackBerry Enterprise Server Express, is free for up to 75 users, which for small businesses should cover them. And I had a few emails back with John, but it's really hard without knowing more about the client and what kind of data they're using, what kind of just their day-to-day processes, their needs. It's hard to know what size server to go with. He actually responded back and said he didn't know their budget. He knows they want the 15 BlackBerry Enterprise server users. He was thinking of a dual CPU server with 6 hard drives, 2 for the system, 2 for the Exchange store, 2 for the data. Each each pair would be RAID 1 configurations. How much RAM and CPUs would you go with? Which server model would you recommend? So I think I replied back to him. And in this particular instance, I sent him a link to an HP. Let me pull it up right now. And of course, I would never buy directly from HP because that's not where I buy my stuff from. But if you wanted to buy it directly from HP, you could. Distributors, Tech Data, Synex, that kind of stuff.
And the link that he's putting up now is for ProLiant